is the final battle. They're going after Trump, and if they can get Trump, it means they can get you, they can get me, they can get all of us. He is standing in the way, and that can sound like a campaign slogan, but it's very true.
Now we're approaching the most important battle of our lives.
Now, for the very first time in American history, a sitting president's DOJ has indicted his top political rival ahead of a presidential campaign. When they indicted me for nothing, I said, now the gloves are off. Now we have to say if I can see the crook.
Now we're approaching the most important battle of our lives. If you fuck around with us, if you do something bad to us, we are going to do things to you that have never been done before.
Well, you told me you were drowning, I would not lend a hand. I've seen your face before, my friend, but I don't know if you know who I am. Well, I was there and I saw what you did. I saw it with my own two eyes. So you could wipe off that grin. I know where you've been. It's all been a pack of lies.
If you have a problem with someone, you have to go after them. And it's not necessarily to teach that person a lesson. It's to teach all of the people that are watching a lesson.
The last time we ever met, but I know the reason why you keep your silence.
When we get back in the White House, I will totally obliterate the deep state.
The hurt doesn't show, but the pain still grows. Some strangers to you and me. I can feel it coming in the air tonight. Oh Lord, and I've been waiting for this moment all my life. Oh Lord.
When we get back power, I don't really want to have peace with these people who did this to us and are continuing to do this to us. We have to turn the tables on them, give them a dose of their own medicine, and then we can even the playing field, and then we can discuss unity.
Hey, everybody, this is Patriot. I wanted to take a minute to tell you folks about a small American company that I've been checking out called Pure Tallow. And it's actually owned by a listener of my show. This is genuinely small batch American-made skincare built around integrity and intention, not mass production. Everything is made by hand, packaged in glass, and created with real care for quality and customer service. The foundation of their products is grass-fed tallow, a traditional ingredient that you've been hearing a lot about since RFK Jr. came on the scene, but it's been used for generations to nourish and protect skin. These products have no toxins, no additives, no synthetic fragrances, just clean, honest formulas for people who care about what goes on their skin. And I venture to say that everybody out there listening falls into that category. What I appreciate about this brand is that it's clearly run by a real person who actually stands behind what she makes. This is not corporate skincare. It is thoughtful, small batch work made with intention and goodwill. They offer simple products for both skin and hair, designed to work without overcomplicating things or adding unnecessary ingredients. So if you're someone who values quality, transparency, and supporting American small businesses, you can check them out at bepuretallow.com. Again, that's bepuretallow.com. I dropped a link in the description, and if you use promo code PU15, you'll get 15% off of your order. This is a win-win, folks. You get an incredible product, you get to support a small American business, and my show in the process. Check them out. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Patriot Underground. Today is July 20th, 2026. Thank you so much for joining me, folks, to discover the truth beneath the surface. As always, I really do appreciate everybody out there taking the time to listen. And at long last, my good friend Mark Abrams and I finally put together a one-on-one show. This is something we've been talking about off the air for quite some time, and it hasn't materialized. And finally, I just messaged Mark a couple of weeks ago, I believe it was, or maybe about a week ago, and we scheduled this. I'm really, really excited about this. We've done many panel shows together. Mark has been on several Patriot roundtables, and as the audience knows, I worked with him and Dave for quite some time doing kind of a back and forth with news treason. But this is the first time that we are actually sitting down, just the two of us, to discuss the landscape. And it's somewhat ironic because we talk pretty frequently behind the scenes. As I've said many times, we have a very close friendship that we've developed over the past few years. And certainly we've had many, many discussions off camera that we wished in hindsight that we had recorded. So today, hopefully we can deliver a great conversation for the audience. I just want to thank everybody out there for tuning in. And perhaps towards the end of this live show today, we might even take a few questions directly from the chat. So Mark, my great friend, it is always an honor and a pleasure. Great to see you. Like I said, you're not retiring fully. I'm not going to allow it. So here we are, buddy. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. It's always great to be here with you. You know, we talk and we talk and we talk and we talk, and we usually, the discussions that we have fall under the old line of some of the best stuff was left on the cutting room floor.
Yeah.
Because it's always behind the scenes that we get some of the great stuff out, but we always have great discussions on and off the air. It's always a lot of fun. And I guess tonight, this one, a steel cage match.
Oh man, it's so great because we get into these substantive discussions. We have a few laughs, and you know, we're very, our souls are very simpatico. I knew that before I even spoke to Mark way back when. I saw a video of him. I've told this story many times. It was a listener of the show who actually posted it, and it was in my Telegram chat. I watched, and I was like, I really got to get in touch with this guy, and it led to just this incredible friendship. And it's so long overdue that you and I just did a solo show. So like I said, I'm really, really excited about this. So let's go ahead and dive in. But before we get into some of the specific developments that have been going on, as is my custom, particularly lately, I like to give my guests the opportunity to kind of set the table, so to speak, by sharing some of your thoughts on the big picture. And both you and I are really big picture guys. Certainly we do appreciate the comms and the decodes, et cetera, but it's really the proverbial 40,000 foot view of both the Q operation and more broadly, even where we find ourselves post the 250th marker anniversary of our great republic. We tend to both focus on the trajectory of the operation and the Great Awakening. So let's start there. And how would you characterize the progress being made on a grand scale in terms of the exposure phase, prompting people to awaken, and how is the stage being set for the hammer of justice to fall? Give us your thoughts.
You know, it's a funny thing because I think we've all got our own impressions as to the way this was going to go, even though, and you and I have had this discussion ad nauseum, none of us know, period. None of us know what's going to happen. There are 10 people who know, and we ain't one of the 10. So it comes down to that flat out. But when you look at what's been going on recently, and we've discussed this ad nauseum also, how many people are getting frustrated, how many people are getting turned off and turned away from all of this because of the fact that it's not, I guess, progressing the way that people would like to see it progressing. And I'm no different. You know, I've got my feelings. I haven't lost faith in the movement. I haven't lost faith in the plan. I haven't lost
Yeah.
faith in the president or the military. But, you know, you reach a point where you got to say, I'm from Missouri, show me. And a lot of things have not been shown. There's been a lot of dripping out, and everybody had great expectations, including myself, for July 4th.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry, but even the fireworks show was a big nothing, an absolute big nothing burger. It might have set some kind of Guinness World Record as far as how many fireworks were set off.
Mm-hmm.
But Grucci sets off a much better firework show in the New York Harbor every single year than what they did at the White House. So it was one of those things. But the announcement last week, while nothing terribly dramatic, to me, was a first salvo.
Uh-huh.
It's a first salvo in a truly positive direction, because it's the first indication that we've actually had that they're going to take steps forward to doing something and to bringing the indictments, the arrests, and hopefully some of the confessions. And if we're lucky, you know, make it a pay-per-view event, some of the executions to public vision, because people. A lot of this is heading toward the midterms. I'm not so sure the midterms are actually going to happen. And that's a possibility. But I think that everything that we've been waiting for and everything that's been going on, and especially, again, what he said last week, points in the direction that the exposure of what has been done to us, what we have allowed to be done to us, is coming. And once that comes, it's open season.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I remember the last roundtable that we did, BB McGuire was on the panel, and she said that the way that she was looking at the 250th was not so much the celebration after the fact. I mean, clearly we know that that's not the case. If we had gone back a year ago, and I remember we had these discussions, nobody really believed at that point in time that we would see the 250th come and go without anything to quote unquote celebrate, meaning we all believed that by that point we would be well into the justice phase. And certainly that did not happen, but BB had made the point that she believes, and I've also heard other of our colleagues make this similar argument, that was, rather than the ending, this is a big celebration, the beginning of really dialing up the volume on. I mean, let's be honest, the exposure phase, the drip, 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 has been going on for years now. And I think we could both agree that when Trump came back in January of 2025, it certainly escalated quite a bit. And we've been pretty much inundated on a daily basis with more and more information. Let's not forget, prior to this big distraction of Iran, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the show, we were like neck deep going through the Epstein files, even though that was really just the tip of the iceberg in terms of what's actually out there and what I believe we're probably going to eventually see. Nevertheless, that was a huge step in the right direction. I mean, we can sit here all day long and we can debate the impact that it had on the general public. And I've made the case that until the general public sees the justice phase commence, there's not going to be any great awakening. I've almost kind of distilled it down to when the media, which I believe is primarily under, I still believe the media is primarily under white hat control, and they're giving them enough rope to hang themselves, or they're, as Mike King says, giving them a shovel and telling them to dig their own grave, essentially. I still see a lot of credibility to that theory, but the point being that those are the two things that are really going to wake the public up dramatically when they see perp walks, when they actually see accountability that the mainstream media can't actually ignore. And at that point, we're going to turn a major corner. So what are your thoughts there?
But see, I look at it from a different skewed point of view because of having spent as much time as I did in the mainstream media. And I look at, even if you just look at those two events, I have to look at it in the sense of what they call a lot of times online a fishing expedition.
Mhm.
I'm looking at it not PH, but F, a regular fishing expedition. Because if you look at normal news cycles throughout our history, throughout the time that I can remember, times you can remember, it's something hits and it's the flavor of the day and then it disappears, and then something else hits and it's flavor. And this is basically what they've done. They cast their reel. Here's Epstein. Okay, let's reel that back. Here comes, voter fraud, blah, blah, blah. And there are different things that are coming up and are presenting themselves. And the news cycle is not sticking to it. They're doing what they've always done. And unfortunately, and I always go back to the 9/11 analogy, people have a short-term memory problem.
They do.
So when you're dealing with that, if you take the flavor, if they're already conditioned to that form of a news cycle, it comes in, the tide comes in, the tide goes out, tide comes in, tide goes out. You're not going to change it by saying, oh, here's the Epstein files, blah, 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 and next, and here you ran the commercial break, now in the next section of the show, you're going into.
And now for something completely different, like Monty Python.
Exactly. People just kind of, they glance over it. They don't really absorb anything. And then eventually they're having that WTF moment saying, wait a minute, I thought we were going to get the full exposure on Epstein. Wait a minute, I thought we were going to get the election fraud stuff out. Wait a minute, I thought that, we were done with Iran. Wait a minute, I thought that, we're going to blast them into no, wait a minute, I thought drill, all these different things, all these balls up in the air, and everybody going, huh?
Yeah.
You gotta look, if we're going to counter the brainwashing that the mainstream media did for decades, it's got to be done the same way. Wash, rinse, repeat, wash, rinse, repeat, wash, rinse, repeat, and you can't do it piecemeal.
Well, I agree with you. And that's been, I guess, one of the things, because me, I'm not afraid to venture upon criticism. Whether I'm right or wrong is rather immaterial in my view. I believe that it's incumbent upon all of us to remain in a certain level of objectivity, right? You can absolutely believe and trust the plan, the white hats, Trump. I'm with you. I haven't lost faith in anything. And oftentimes when you venture upon criticism that gets mischaracterized, suddenly you become a black pillar. Suddenly people are saying, oh, you're turning on Trump. It's amazing. I mean, even the most mild things that I've said in certain people's minds, that's an indication that I've completely flipped or anything along those lines. And it's actually unfortunate. Maybe we can get into that a little bit later on in the show, just in terms of the kind of cult-like mentality that has taken root within our movement. But the reality of the matter is, I mean, you touched upon an important word, which is absorption. Like how is the general public that has an attention span of a goldfish going to actually really start to dial in and pay attention unless they see this stuff on a repetitive loop? And instead, what we've seen primarily by the white hats is I've often used that metaphor. I know I mention it just at about every show I do, of the chef in the kitchen putting things on the front burner and then moving things around and then taking them off and so forth. And for a long time, we talked about that tactic, and we saw a lot of, I guess, positive attributes to taking that approach in terms of narrative seeding, in terms of not overloading the public with too much information too fast. I think everybody out there would agree that taking the garbage pan approach and just dumping it all over the unsuspecting population would not be effective. It would be quite counterproductive. But nevertheless, there is sort of somewhat of an in between there, where there needs to be a little bit more consistency in terms of getting the public to focus their attention using the tools that we presume are at the disposal of the white hats, including the media, to do that. And there's been there's been somewhat of a, I guess, a very obvious attempt to induce cognitive dissonance, which is part of the process of breaking the matrix. But I would argue that at this stage, we need to see a little bit more consistency in terms of exposure and not just like dangling things out a limited hangout, but really focusing the attention of the public on perhaps one issue at a time, whether it be election fraud. And that's one of the things that I wanted to dig into in a little bit more detail. So let's talk about that speech. I mean, it was last week. I don't remember exactly what day it was. Was it Thursday? Yeah. Okay. So it's not even been a week. Trump gave a what I would consider to be a landmark speech on the stolen 2020 election. I put out a post in the aftermath of it saying it's anything but a nothing burger. Like this is a huge, the way you describe it, opening salvo. I'm in full agreement. This speech about the stolen 2020 election. And we've been waiting for this. Trump has been foreshadowing it in multiple different ways in recent months, saying, as soon as we release these files, there's not going to be any question about it, and so on. So there was a lot of anticipation. And there were several aspects that were highlighted in the process. So just to kind of give folks a few bullet points, I'm sure everybody in the audience is very well versed, but China compromised, I think it was 220 million US voter files, described as the largest compromise of election data in history. 220 million people were exposed in this hack starting in the 2020 cycle. It included names, addresses, party affiliations, et cetera, et cetera. And much of this data, of course, is now publicly available. We also found out that upwards of 278,000 non-citizens, illegals, are registered to vote. I suppose it wouldn't just be illegals, it would also be dead people, et cetera, et cetera. 278,000, that's not a small number, folks, registered to vote in federal elections, and this is per the DHS findings. And of course, more details I'm sure are going to come out. We found out about the vulnerabilities in the voting machines and the ballot systems. Trump came out and said Americans were blatantly lied to about election security. He highlighted the risks of hacking, of exploitation, of foreign interference. He talked about Michigan voter registration fraud, I should say, this alleged large-scale operation where canvassers forged applications. The FBI investigated. There were no charges filed, no illegal votes cast per the authorities, quote unquote. And then, of course, there was the main focus seemed to be China, the broader foreign meddling. And it wasn't just China, as we know, Venezuela. And I do believe that's a big reason why we have Nicolas Maduro alive. He's going to play a very interesting role in this scripted movie. But China and others, of course, influenced business leaders, journalists. They attempted to undermine the elections. Voter rolls in at least 18 states were allegedly accessed and hacked. And Trump packaged this primarily as, he did say that criminal investigations should be opened up if warranted, which obviously they are. But it was framed, at least in my view, and I'm curious to get your take on this, as primarily a pitch and a push to pass the Save America Act, which of course is strict voter ID, proof of citizenship, ahead of the 2026 midterms, something that is supported by a vast majority of the population, regardless. It's really a nonpartisan issue for the most part, based upon the numbers that I've seen in the polls. So with that said, the election fraud speech, like I mentioned, largely focused on China. What was your take as you were watching this and all the things that Trump laid out? Give us your thoughts on how significant this was as that opening salvo you mentioned.
It was significant as an opening salvo just in the fact that it was addressed. And it's something people have been waiting for.
Yep.
To me personally, when he finished, it was and in essence, my and was correctly timed and placed because, okay, so it happened Thursday and Friday, You had 2 days of the weekend, and you had today.
Right.
What's transpired? Ngats, as they used to say in Brooklyn. Right? You know, it's one of those situations, like I said before, with the fishing expedition. And going back to July 4th, a lot of patriots had their heads filled, myself included, with the fact that, this is going to be the beginning of our 1 year long celebration. And I know I said it a billion times, and so did you. You have to have a reason to celebrate for a year in order to have a 1 year celebration.
Yep.
And what did we get?
That was a massive head fake. That's kind of what it seems like to me at this point in retrospect.
Yeah. And so now you got this. And exactly what you just said is very real and very honest in regard to the fact that it's, we got to get this act passed and make sure that we have secure elections. But no matter how you look at it, publicly, it doesn't mean squat if it's a partisan topic or not, because we don't get to vote on it. The assholes that we're paying get to vote on it. And that is a partisan problem. That is a problem of the Democrats. That is a problem of the rhinos. That is a problem of the games that get played behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
And you could be, it's irrelevant to what I'm saying, but you could go back to, Trump could come up with the cure for cancer, and they'll find something wrong with it.
Yeah,
it's the same thing here. The best laid plans of mice and men. You could have. It's a wonderful idea, and it's an extremely important and pertinent idea to any country that holds public elections. But if you don't have these jackasses in Washington doing what they're supposed to be doing, which is representing us, we the people. We don't work for them. They work for us. There's a reason back when the founders said, that the people shouldn't fear the government should fear the people.
Yep.
That we have lost that. And we didn't lose it by a revolution. We, with malice of forethought, gave it up.
Mm-hmm.
That is the problem. And you can talk and you can talk and you can talk, and all these things make a lot of sense to all the patriots and to all the liberals out there that sit and go, bullshit, blah, 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 blah. It doesn't matter what we think, because we don't have that control. We have forfeited that control. This whole movement is about taking back our country.
Yep. And
we all do a lot of talking about it. But so far, we ain't doing dick about it. And that's a big problem. People get really pissed off at me when I say you got to get off your ass and get involved. You'll always have some joker out. Well, I do this. Okay, well, you're one of maybe 40, 50,000 people listening to this. Okay. So I didn't mention your name and say you have to get off your ass. I'm talking people
in
have
the general sense. Yeah. In the general sense. And people get really butthurt about that. I get it. And because that's the type of thing. And I wanted to dig into this a little bit, later in the show, when we get kind of through some of the highlights of what's actually happened. But
no, damn it, we're going to talk about it now.
I mean, since we're on the topic, I guess we can dabble a little bit here. There's primarily two camps within the Patriot movement, within the Truth movement, in people who are dialed into Q, even, right? The camp that I was very much a part of, and the echo chamber, in a sense, I guess, that I helped to build, which was, we're watching a scripted movie, and you were too, to an extent, when we were working together, particularly you, myself, and Dave. That was primarily the narrative we were putting out, which is, yes, it is a Mil-Civ alliance, but our job is primarily to interpret the comms, to keep people calm, and to just help everybody to realize the military is in full control, and that it's just a matter of time. We have to watch the movie play out and so forth. But gradually, I started to become a little bit more not critical of other people, and this is another area where a lot of my commentary and I'll just mention this because we're on the topic now, a lot of my commentary has been misconstrued. I've had certain people saying, well, you're flipping the script on people like that you worked with, like Mike King and like Dave and Rambo and all these people. That the reality is I have great respect for what they do and their narrative. It's not a reflection upon them. It's rather, it was my own introspection because I was very much a part of that. And my perspective started to shift a little bit when I started to re-envision what that Mill-Civ alliance really means. And to your point, I guess not really being satisfied anymore with the idea that we're supposed to just sit back and allow the military to do their thing and just decode all the psyops and enjoy the show and eat our popcorn, but rather that we have to take action on a mass scale, not just individuals here and there sharing videos or posting memes or anything like that, but we actually have to apply the pressure because the truth of the matter is, I know your good friend Derek Johnson kind of coined the term, the target audience, right, of the movie are the normies. But I've done a lot of thinking about that, and I know I've shared some of these thoughts with you off air. The ones who are paying the closest attention to this scripted movie, meaning this repetitive, seemingly endless series of psyops, is us, the Anons. Like we're more dialed in than anybody. So to suggest that, and no disrespect to Derek, but to suggest that we're not the intended audience of the movie, at least at some level, to me, I don't think really holds a lot of muster. As a matter of fact, I think a lot of what the White Hats have been doing as of late with so many of these optics and mixed messages is trying to induce that cognitive dissonance within us so that we actually break free a little bit from this idea of just simply remaining passive and starting to apply more pressure and starting to get more and more vocal about the lack of accountability, the lack of justice. And people get really upset about that because they say, well, don't you know people are wearing masks? And don't you know people have already been executed in Gitmo? And don't you know that this, that, and the next thing? And my response to that is that may be very well be true. And I'm not suggesting it isn't true. But until the general public becomes aware of that justice, of that accountability, it's like a tree falling in the forest. Like, I mean, it doesn't really matter. Nobody hears it. And it doesn't have any sizable effect on moving the needle of public consciousness. And the stated objective of this operation has always been, at least one of the primary ones, has been to awaken the masses. And you and I both agree that at this stage, at this stage of the game right now, that really hasn't happened in mass. Now, could certainly something transpire while we're live today or tomorrow or next week or in a month from now that would completely be a game changer? Absolutely. And that's exactly what I'm waiting for and pushing for a lot more aggressively. So what say you to that?
I've got to fall back on my career. Okay. And I know we touched on this the last time, and I've discussed this numerous times, but I really hold true to this. A lot of the Patriots, and the way that I've phrased it in the past is I go back to the Reawaken America tours. Okay, you have a lot of people who understand that there's a problem, have no clue what's going on. And you have people who know that there's a problem and they're involved in this and that and the other, but the problem happens to be, and it's probably the biggest problem out there, just like I've said that the media is the most important arm of the cabal.
Yep.
People have fallen into this MSM sense that they live their entire lives on, only they're doing it with Telegram and Rumble now. Mm-hmm. They're not.
And the podcasters out there, let's just be honest.
Well, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
That's what's there. And they're falling into the habit of, well, Patriot Underground said, Mark said, Dave said, Rambo said it. They'll talk about this one said, that one said. Who, pardon my French people, who gives a shit? Okay? Who gives a shit what I say or what I think? What do you think? Okay? And this is what every single journalist out there should have been doing all along. Okay. Most people, because of the simple fact, and this is the one thing I wish that people would wake up to and realize and accept. We don't know squat.
Yep.
We are not meant to know squat because this is a military operation and no good general is going to divulge his battle plans. So all this stuff is put out there. And what all of us have done for all this time is really put out our opinions on what we think is going on and decoding the Q drops and interpreting this and that and the other. And, no personal offense to Mike King, but Mike King's stuff, and he states it right there in his own handwriting. Okay. The editorial board of the anti-New York Times. Well, an editorial is his opinion. It's not a fact. It's not reality. It is an opinion. And most of what you're getting are opinions.
That's right.
There's a certain amount of truths out there, but you need to listen. You need to discern. You need to follow and say, something about that doesn't ring right with me. I'm not buying this. Or the opposite end of that, yeah, that really resonates with me. I think that's good. And we can't fall back into the place that got us where we are.
I agree.
We're trying to break away from where we were.
And that's exactly why I've kind of pivoted, and it's been so misunderstood by a lot of people out there, because again, I understand oftentimes it's called hopium, right? And it's a very addictive drug to believe that you have a monopoly on the truth. You have your finger on the pulse of everything. And all you have to do is just sit back and look at the comms and believe that everything is a scripted movie, that everything's under full control, that nothing we're actually seeing is real, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And look, it kind of like, it's like a glass of whiskey. It makes you feel all warm and fuzzy inside, and it's great, but like you said, the reality of the matter is that these are basically just narratives, right? They're not bona fide truths. And in a sense, I found myself more and more gravitating in that direction. And I kind of like pulled back internally, and I thought to myself, well, in the beginning of my journey, I was a lot more objective. I cast a wide net. I listened to a whole bunch of different perspectives. And as time goes on, I'm becoming more and more narrow in the lens that I look at things. And what does it really mean to be a truther? What does it really mean to be an anon? Is it just putting out the same narrative on a loop and basically doing shows to support that narrative? And don't get me wrong, it's being fed by a certain aspect, a certain wing of this operation. Like the White Hats continue to put out all of these comms, all these 17s, all these deltas. So they're catering to that on the one hand. But on the other hand, there's also a whole bunch of what I would just kind of group together as, let's just say, negative optics, or things that don't quite look right, or things that we need to maybe pause for a moment and consider, like the existential threats that seem to be forming, taking shape in terms of various different things, but most prevalently over the past couple of months anyway, the expansion of AI and robots and the surveillance state, the flock cameras, the drones, all of these types of things. Are we supposed to just actually put blinders on and think to ourselves, well, no matter what we're being subjected to, don't worry, because it's all going to turn out okay. And the White Hats are just showing, I mean, that was kind of my narrative for a while, was that they're just showing us what the deep state had planned. But at the end of the day, what it really means to be a truther, in my opinion, is to tell the truth in a situation like this, is to do exactly what you just said, which is to say, ultimately, none of us really know where this is headed, what the timeline is going to be, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. And there are cases to be made on all different sides for all different narratives. And I believe that that's part of the way the operation was designed, And I find it interesting in a sense because, like I mentioned before, the white hats seem to be catering to this one crowd, which is basically white hats are in full control. Sit back, enjoy your popcorn, trust Trump, don't question the plan, don't be a panican, etc. We're seeing memes on a daily basis coming out of white hat accounts. And so that's really having the effect of just fortifying the position of these people and just saying the rest of you are all crazy. But on the other hand, they're doing a lot of things that were contrary to what any of us voted for, any of us anticipated or expected. There are, in my opinion, certain things that we simply cannot ignore if we're being honest with ourselves, not having a full picture in terms of existential threats. So it's almost as if they seem to be, like, in a way, dividing the MAGA movement. I don't know if you agree with that or not, but it seems to me to be the direction that they're headed. And I was kind of curious what your thoughts were on that and what could be the potential. I have some thoughts on it, but what could be the potential objective behind that?
Well, I don't think that they're trying to, quote unquote, divide the MAGA movement.
Well, it's been divided. I don't think we can deny that.
It has been, but I think the purpose of it is just what we were just discussing. Is this is the Great Awakening. Let's get the people who are actually awake, who are actually thinking, and separate them from the rest of the herd who need a little bit of that wet towel across the face. You know, if you take certain things, you go back to the 40,000 foot view. Mm-hmm. Let's take, for instance, and going on the premise, and I say the premise because, again, we don't know squat, but going on the premise that all of this is already done and we're watching the replay. You've got Iran. Okay, we took out Iran's nuclear stuff. We didn't take out Iran's nuclear stuff. Okay, we crippled, we've destroyed their army, we've destroyed their navy, we've destroyed their air force, blah, blah, blah. You know, okay, so they're coming to the table and they want to make a deal. They don't want to make a deal.
Yep.
You know, okay, the Strait of Hormuz is open. You know, don't screw with us or we'll blast you back to the Stone Age. Yep, they screwed with us. We still haven't blasted them back to the Stone Age. These should all be WTF moments for anybody who's truly awake. And you sit and you look at these things and you have to wonder to yourself, what exactly is the game? If we actually have control, I know you've got to wake up the normies also. You can't tell them, you've got to show them. But yes, you got to show them. And you got to show us too. Because while they have to wake up, we need something tangible that we can sink our teeth into so that we don't lose hope, we don't lose direction, and we don't lose the drive, and we don't lose the willingness that, quote unquote, when this is open, we're willing and able to take over, take back our country. Mm-hmm. You're not getting that. And we haven't gotten that really with anything. It goes back to what I said before about the news cycle. It's there, it's gone. It's something else is there, it's gone. Yeah. And else, you know, oh, gonna blow, you know, drill baby drill. How come gas prices are still so high? They went down because the Strait of Hormuz was open. Now they're screwing around again, and you know, gas prices are going back up, and gas prices affect every single thing in our lives. And people are hurting. I understand it's a war. I understand where we are. But you got to give the people who are backing you something tangible to sink their teeth into so that we know, okay, I'm not going to tell you when it's ending. I'm not going to tell you how it's going to end, but we're not far off.
Well, that's the way I interpret a lot of these memes that I've seen that I mentioned before, out of these official white hat accounts of, you know, patriots are in control, mirroring the Q drops. Obviously, where we go one, we go all. Patriots are in control. Trump has been Q posting now for like 2 years. I mean, it's nothing new at this point. I recall my good friend Spiritual Street Fighter when he started posting her stuff. It was like, oh my God, holy crap! And now it's almost like, you know, okay, so we did it again. And there are some people who continually get all ramped up and excited about that. And I get it, because we're all at different phases of our journey. And there are a lot of people out there who still need that like constant reassurance that Patriots are in full control. And but see, the thing of it is I think that those two things can coexist. I believe that the Patriots can be in control of the chessboard, but at the same time, they can also be leveraging all of these negative optics in an attempt to get us, to force us to question things and to demand, like you were saying, something tangible that would ultimately prove that this is indeed a benevolent. We certainly know that there's a military operation going on. There's no question that there are repetitive psyops going on. You have to have your head completely up your rear end to not recognize that. Unfortunately, a lot of people do, but more and more people are looking at things like you indicated and saying, well, this doesn't make sense. Just with Iran, I mean, it was like the war starts and stops. The victory is declared, and then we open up the war again like 3 times in the same day. And I believe that they're doing all of that on purpose. But the point I'm making here is that I believe you can have the Patriots being in full control, or at least in control of the chessboard, having the upper hand, while at the same time they can be leveraging a lot of these negative optics in order to get us to become more active, more vocal, to demand justice and accountability. Because at the end of the day, no matter what we talk about inside of our echo chambers, right? No matter how many times we do a neck check and we point out the masks and we point out all of the ludicrous things that they've thrown in front of us, if the people are, if the masses out there, if that is not penetrating their consciousness, then ultimately it's all, it's basically just fodder for us. It's just like kind of throwing us a bone. But at this stage of the game, I think you would agree with me that we need to see something a lot more dramatic, not just for us, not just for our sense of vindication or anything like that, because that's primarily ego driven, but we need to see something tangible in the form of accountability and justice, because that is the only thing that's going to, 1, wake up the masses, and 2, prove that this is indeed a benevolent military operation that's moving us in the right direction, which I still believe, by the way. I haven't wavered on that. I'm not sitting here thinking or considering Q as being a negative psyop in any way. But I also think that a lot of the things that the white hats are doing are, in a sense, begging us to question them and to get beyond just simply talking about the comms and talking about the deltas, et cetera, and saying, look, that stuff is all well and good. It served its purpose, and it's still serving a purpose for a lot of folks out there. Okay. But at the same time, this has also been going on for years. There's no indication that it couldn't go on for several more years. And we need to see a very dramatic turn in the right direction. And that's ultimately what I think this is all about. And indeed, when I first started talking about this, and there were a lot of people who were way ahead of the curve, like Louis Herms, our mutual friend, for example, has been saying this all along, that he believes that the white hat operation is benevolent. He doesn't believe it's an operation trust type of situation. But at the same time, he's been at the forefront of saying, we, the people, are the plan and have always been the plan. And if that's the case, and I believe it is, then that is completely contradictory to the mindset that has taken root inside of our community. And that is the problem. So you can walk and chew gum at the same time. I've talked a lot about this binary mindset, this matrix binary mindset, where it's either one or the other. Either your Patriots are in full control, sit back, enjoy the show, eat your popcorn, don't question anything because you're a panikin, or if you do happen to question, or you do happen to have a conversation like we're having along these lines, oh, suddenly you're a black pillar, suddenly you don't believe in the plan, suddenly you're turning on Trump. I mean, tell me I'm wrong, folks. This is the dynamic that's taken root inside of our community. All right. And again, I hold myself, at least in some ways, responsible for that, because I spent years developing and really and adding to that echo chamber along with a lot of other people. I was coming from a good place, don't get me wrong. But eventually you get to a point where there is no substitute for action. There is no substitute for justice and accountability. And I often point to General Flynn as a prime example of that, or somebody else like Catherine Herridge, Okay, two individuals that we believe wholeheartedly, and there's a whole bunch of evidence to suggest that they are part of the operation, deeply part of the operation, no doubt about it. Okay, follow the pen, General Flynn's all over the Q drops more than anybody else. What are the two of them are, and there are many other examples, by the way, of these high profile people who are speaking specifically to the Patriot community. They're not talking to the normies. Most of the normies have no idea who Catherine Herridge is or who General Flynn is. And what are they saying every single day in almost every post? And I can show you examples. Just go to General Flynn's Twitter account right now, his X account, in the aftermath of President Trump's speech. Both of them are talking about it's time for justice. We need arrests. We need accountability. We need this. We need that. They're not talking to the normies, folks. Their audience is the same audience that watches my podcast, Mark's podcast, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So think about that. I mean, go ahead. I don't want to monopolize.
Because if you go back to basics, which is really what needs to be done in this entire war that we're in, go back to basics. Never mind the word truthers, podcasters, this, that, or the other. What we are communicators. Something that's been, along with a sense of humor and this and that and the other, one thing has been lost in the preceding bunch of decades is the ability for people to communicate. They've driven us out of that. They've divided us in a manner where we can't communicate anymore. We can argue, we can fight, but we can't communicate. And communication is the basis of everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's the basis of everything that we do, everywhere that we go. Communication is the basis. And I think, and it's a departure for us and for a lot of people, but I think that if more people took a step back from worrying about what the white hats are doing, worrying about what the military is doing, and put the effort into communicating with their friends, with their loved ones, with anybody who agrees or disagrees with you, and you just went and sat down and tried to talk to people, and even if they drastically disagree with you, agree to disagree. Everything doesn't have to be a fight.
Mm-hmm.
But get into these discussions, have these discussions. Even the normies are not happy where things are. There isn't a person in this country who's happy with things are, whether you're a patriot or you're a normie. It doesn't matter. There's more than enough disdain to go around. But the way that things are right now, if you're a patriot and you believe in the plan, you believe in the military, and you believe in the president, you have to sit and say, I believe in them, and not sit and constantly follow or question what it is that's being done. You've got to sit and watch, kind of with a casual glance over as to what's going on, trust in the plan, and that the plan is going in the direction that it should be going. And we have to fix us. I can't stress this enough, and this is about the third time already I've done it today. It comes back to us. Because, and we discussed this in the last time we got together also, the simple fact that this probably would have been over already if we had advanced ourselves enough that we could take control of our own country.
I agree.
They don't have the faith in us to do that. And I'm sure I'd stake my life on the fact that that's part of what's holding this all back. Because
I agree with you.
The troops can go in and you could take over. You're in charge of the Citadel. But if you don't know what the hell you're doing, the Citadel's going to fall just as fast as you took it over. probably even faster.
Yep.
So you've got to be prepared. And I think that preparation lies in our communicative abilities. And right now, as a people, we ain't got it.
Well, that's exactly what I was getting at, right? There was a comment over here by somebody I put up on the screen briefly, and it highlights exactly what I'm saying. It's not to call anybody out, but I don't even see it anymore. But someone had said, "Oh, Patriot Underground, he's not a full control guy anymore." And I guess, and I want to address that, okay? Because a lot of people think that when you say "we the people are the plan," that is a direct contradiction somehow to the Patriots being in full control. I would posit that's a false dynamic right there. Saying that the White Hats are in full control is not contradicting the idea that we the people are the plan. Go back and read the Q drops. Okay, it talked about a military-civilian alliance. I discussed this with Louis Herms in great detail during our last show. It mentions us, the people, far more often than anything else in the Q drops. So to suggest that that's somehow a contradiction, that somehow I'm no longer a believer in Q, or somehow I'm doubting Trump and I'm doubting the plan. No, I'm reinterpreting what our role is as Anons. The Patriots, the White Hats, can be in complete control, but maybe their objective is to do exactly what Mark was just talking about, what Louis has been talking about, what I've been talking about on recent shows as well, is to activate people, is to challenge this idea of passivity, because that has taken root, at least in my opinion, that a lot of people, this false dichotomy, it's like people think that if they believe it's all a scripted movie, and if they believe that the White Hats are in full control, then all they have to do is sit back and enjoy the show. All right. And what I'm suggesting here is you can do both. You can believe that wholeheartedly, as I do, that Trump and the White Hats are in full control of the chessboard. It doesn't mean necessarily that all threats have been eliminated, by the way. I do not subscribe to that. Okay. I do believe certainly that we're watching a scripted movie in a sense, but that does not mean that all evil has been eradicated from the earth. I do believe that there are still kinetic operations and still pockets of the deep state that are being removed. I mean, just look in Iran. I'll just give you a quick example. I don't know if you saw this story, but the former president of Iran, Ahmadinejad, was taken into custody for being in cahoots with Israeli intelligence. Okay, so that's a direct indication that they've gone in there and they're cleaning out deep state elements inside of Iran. So I think that stuff is still going on. But the bigger point that I'm making here is that the White Hats being in full control does not contradict the idea that they're forcing us to question things, and that they're forcing us to be much more active at the local level, to be demanding justice, to be demanding accountability, and all of those things that General Flynn and Catherine Herridge and so many other people out there are talking about right now. These are not ideas that are mutually exclusive, and people need to get that through their head, because it's not simply about just sitting back and saying, oh, we're just going to sit and enjoy our popcorn, and we're just going to interpret everything as being fake and as a scripted movie, as if there are actually no real viable threats out there, as if everything that we're watching is curated and scripted, folks. It doesn't work that way. What they want us to do, I believe, and again, I'm just a man with an opinion here, but what they want us to do and what they're forcing us to do as time goes on, as Anons, as truthers, is to break that programming. Because I think for a season that was useful, but we're now into an entirely different phase of the operation. Like Mark and I both agreed, like BB McGuire was talking about, that this is really the transition into the build-up to the justice phase, and that we have to continue to get louder and louder about what it is that we want to see that's been promised to us ultimately. All right, now I'll just give you a couple examples here. General Flynn, I've mentioned him multiple different times. Okay, this was going back to July 16th. Okay, just to give you a couple of little tidbits here. People must be held accountable, otherwise the behavior will not change. I mean, these are long posts. I'm not going to read through all of them. I encourage everybody to go check out his X feed. Okay, based on what the POTUS presented this evening about our corrupt elections, the CIA and NSA directors during his first term should be immediately arrested for treason. Okay, and it just goes on and on. There are other ones up here. I think I saw, oh yeah, about Nikki Flores. Okay, this came out in President Trump's press conference. This FBI agent who bragged, I'm basically running a shadow government across the FBI at this point. Right? The shadow government also kept important documents away from the president. He says, all right, good question. But then there was another one up here where he says, again, these people never thought these emails would see the light of day. We, the people, demand accountability. And it just, I mean, I could list 100 other posts from General Flynn. Who is he actually talking to, folks? You really think he's trying to communicate to the normies out there? No, he's talking to his audience, which is the same audience, the same group of people that watches all of these podcasts. All right. So to suggest that, so what do you want to say? That General Flynn is he a black pillar? Does he not believe that the Patriots are in full control? Of course. I mean, this is what I'm talking about. There is a concerted effort with all of these negative optics and things that we never imagined would transpire with Trump and the White Hats in power that are playing out right now for that specific reason, to get people to actually activate, to be, and how the question always gets posed, well, what do you suggest we do? Well, General Flynn has answered that question, right? Local action has a national impact. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but people getting more and more involved, people getting louder and more vocal instead of just sitting back and looking at comms all day and deltas and thinking that everything's already taken care of. Because I think Mark, and I'll pass it over to you with this, Mark makes a great point, which is ultimately they're waiting on us. They're waiting for us to be ready for that hammer of justice to fall. Okay. And there's multiple different aspects to it. There's the normie mindset. There's the overall rise in consciousness, but we're the tip of the spear. And we have to be in the position where we're no longer simply sitting back and waiting for things to happen, but actually taking action at a local level. There's a million different things that people can do to get involved. And that's ultimately what this is all about. Even if you go on social media and you share information and you demand justice and so forth, that's a way of contributing. But let me pass it back to you, man. I feel like I'm pontificating over it.
Well, but you brought up a good point, and where you started the point is a key element here. Okay, you've always got people. It's like I live my life by the golden rule. Okay, if you treat people the way that you expect to be treated, 99.9% of the time you're going to get back in spades what you give, even though there's always going to be a prick in the crowd.
Oh yeah.
Most of the time you're going to get back in spades what you give. So you're going to have somebody like that who doesn't have anything contributory to say, but feels they have to say something. Okay.
Ain't that the truth?
We all go through this, and we all go through it because more people are, what do you call it? Couch warriors, keyboard warriors than they are warriors. Yep. If people sat back and followed any of the stuff that's going on, followed any of the stuff that's being posted by people like Catherine Herridge, by people like General Flynn, by the president, by Kash Patel, any of this stuff. And when you sit and you watch how much and how often liberals will go and hold protest rallies, protest gatherings, discussion groups, et cetera, et cetera. If we spend half as much time doing the same thing and getting people to discuss just what you posted, the question of, this member of our wonderful FBI and all the other information that's out there, why are they not? If we all got together and said, push this justice.
Arrest her.
Yes. Bring it out.
Now for treason.
Exactly.
Yes.
Then you would see the white hats having to go,
Ah,
Courts, they've got it.
yeah.
And
And
people,
until we do that, what are they going to keep doing, Mark?
they're going to keep
Same
dragging their
exact thing.
asses along.
They're going to give us psyops on repeat.
That's right.
A lesson repeats itself until it's learned, folks.
Exactly. Bingo. That's really where it goes. It's, here I'm going to do it again. It's we the people. And we the people have to do it. I don't give a damn what side of the political fence you're sitting. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. What matters is the fact that we have let these clowns that we pay, who in turn took over the role of creating their own salaries, creating their own benefits, creating their own retirement packages on our dime, because we've allowed it, make these rules and regulations. And and the media has divided us into the Yankees and the Red Sox. Simple as that, Red Boston stinks. No, the Yankees suck. Blah, blah, blah. And it goes back and forth. Well, it's the same thing with the Patriots and the liberals. Okay. There's no two ways about it. The divide must be conquered. We must have those conversations. We must create those conversations.
That's right.
We have to get the people out there. We have to get our people out there. And if people like one of my former guests on Respect, I won't mention his name, was probably the most reviled guest I ever had on the show.
Oh,
but
boy.
Somebody who, this is a person who, as people always thought, it's a crock that crowds get paid to be there. Well, he was the person who hires the crowds. And,
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
Yes. And you get the people out there, and you get, rather than a bunch of, Antifa schmucks showing up for it, or whosoever that's getting paid for it. And you just get normal people with opposing viewpoints. And you engage, but not in a hostile manner. You engage in a human kindness manner, and you have the damn conversations. It's always, always, always possible to meet in the middle.
Yeah.
And until we decide to do that, and until we decide to meet in the middle, and until we force those conversations, and until we turn around as a united group of Americans and force the white hats' hands to go and arrest these people, to go and make these things public, to bring it all to the forefront, we will never be ready.
Well, I agree, Mark. But, there's so many people out there who say, oh, you're being negative. You're being negative. No, I'm sorry. We're not being negative. We're actually telling the truth here about what we know and what we don't know. And look, Mark and I certainly are not here making the case that we have the monopoly on the truth by any stretch of the imagination. But the fact of the matter is that everything that you're hearing us discuss tonight is grounded in reality. All right. In the sense that we really don't know. It's amazing to me because, and you've touched upon this a little bit, that when this whole movement really kicked off, you go back to when Trump came on the scene back in 2015, right? And this was a couple of years prior to the first Q drop. Trump comes on the scene. What was the reaction of most people back then when Trump first came on the political scene? Donald Trump? Are you kidding me? What? That was my first impression. And most of the people that I was connected with and that I was talking to in forums and chats at that point in time who were politically like-minded, who were awake, had the same general reaction. What was the reaction when Q first started posting 2 years later? It was very, very suspect, very like, well, what is this? People were naturally suspicious. And I don't necessarily think that that's a bad thing. As a matter of fact, I think that is a healthy thing. All right. When you are coming from a place of critical thinking and objectivity and being somewhat suspect and not just taking everything at face value, over time, of course, we all bought into the Q operation. We were taught to, we learned so many things, and we ultimately developed that trust in the relationship. Okay. But now it's kind of like you fast forward and it's become this really weird virtue signal where I'm just going to rubber stamp everything that happens, no matter what it is. I'm just going to rubber stamp that and say, well, the white hats and Trump are saying this and doing this. So therefore, I trust Trump. I trust the white hats. I'm not going to question anything. Well, I got news for you, folks. That's the same sheep-like mentality that we are trying to battle against. Okay. The fact of the matter is that the truth ultimately is the only thing that's going to unify people. All right. And I've said it many different times, in the absence of justice, in the absence of accountability, society only grows sicker. All right. But this idea that you in order to trust Trump and trust the operation and so forth, you have to just automatically agree with everything and not question anything, folks. I mean, that to me that's like reverting back. That's taking several steps back from where we need to be. As a matter of fact, I think it's contrary, as I made the point already tonight, to what the white hats are trying to get us to do in the first place. I believe that they're trying to induce that cognitive dissonance in us, to break that programming, to say, well, wait a second. We trust Trump, we trust the plan, but we want to see results. And why are you doing this? And why are you doing that? Suddenly, that makes you less of a patriot?
See, but Patriot, just interrupt you for a second. The key element that you just brought up there is the brainwashing. Now, for those who are of my voting generation, at which point in time, I had already been voting at that point 8 years. My first election was 1972 with Tricky Dick. But facts being what they are, in 1980, that's when they made, no matter how you want to look at them, that's how they made this clown show into a clown show. When all of a sudden we had an actor running for president of the United States, and he won. And then after that, you had Gopher from the Love Boat in I think that was Michigan or something like that, and then you had Jesse Ventura as governor of Minnesota. You had Arnold as the governor in California, and you had all of these it denigrated our entire political system in the view of many, many Americans. And it was at that point, I think, that a lot of this turned away from the seriousness of what our government really is to the joke that it had become. So by the time that Donald Trump came along and they brought him on the scene, I think that's why you had so much negative viewpoint of somebody like, oh, here we go. Was it going to tell everybody, go into Congress and say, you're fired? It's this type of mentality. And again, it's a brainwashing that they put us through. And because we're faithful viewers, we bought it, hook, line, and sinker. The brainwashing has to be broken. And we're not taking the proper steps to break the brainwashing.
And not just the brainwashing, just to clarify what you're saying, not just the brainwashing of the sheep-like normies out there, but actually the brainwashing that's taken root within our own community. Is that what you're referring to?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, that's exactly what I'm talking about. And it just, it really rubs me the wrong way, because it's incredible, because you come out and you demand, like President Trump gives this landmark speech. And then you put out a post, or you become vocal and say, all right, we want these people arrested. We want that, I forgot her name, that FBI agent who I just mentioned a moment ago, who is running a shadow government. Arrest her. All right. Well, if you say that, a lot of people now are going to come out and say, what are you, a panicking? Trust the plan. And it's like, oh, wait a second. You're telling me that I can't trust the plan? You're telling me that I can't trust in my president and I can't trust in Q, and at the same time demand arrests and accountability? How does that work exactly? The same people who have all of these years, I mean, going back to 2020, the stolen election, going back to COVID, okay? That time period between 2019 and 2021, the people that were, their hair was on fire, they're jumping up and down, arrest someone, arrest someone. And now a lot of these same people are saying, oh, you're a panic and you don't trust the plan, you're a black pillar. You know, I mean, it's incredible. That to me is indicative of the brainwashing that has taken root inside of our own community, folks. And this is what I'm talking about. People think that you have to pick a lane, choose a side. All right. That's not what this is all about. That's not what this movement about. Truth comes from within. All right. And that's ultimately, I think, where Mark is coming from. That's where I'm coming from, and Lewis and so many other great patriots out there who are often misunderstood because we haven't lost sight of what the ultimate objectives of this operation are. And there's some people out there who would just say, well, you know, if it goes on for another decade, then so be it. It's just going to take however long it takes. And they've kind of developed this very passive attitude about the whole thing. And my whole point is that ultimately it's our job to be the tip of the spear, our job to be demanding justice, because we're the ones who are the most informed, not to be sitting back and eating our popcorn. I mean, you can trust that the patriots are in control, but you don't have to sit back and become passive in the face of that. You still have to apply that pressure, because at the end of the day, folks, after everything is all said and done, and the white hats come in, you know, on their silver, on their white horse, and they save the day or whatever the people think is going to happen. However this plays out, they're not going to do that. And I've talked about this with Ricardo Bossi. I've talked about it with a lot of people that I respect. They're not going to do it until, if and when, the people are ready to take the responsibility and take control and be able to fill the void that this hammer of justice dropping is going to make. Like, we have to be the ones to step up. We have to be the ones to take that leadership position. And I think in a lot of ways, what's happening right now is we're being tested. I truly believe that.
And look at what they put right in front of you. Okay. And the stall tactics that they put right in front of you. Look at Comey. Okay. With the way the justice system is right now, ain't no way in hell the charge is going to stick. Ain't no way in hell they're going to get any kind of conviction on them, et cetera, et cetera. It's a plain and known fact. Why? Because we know that the judges are corrupt. We know certain things that have gone on that we, in personal life, see the prejudice of the legal system against what's right and what's legal and what's just. So when you look at just that case alone, they can make this drag out and drag out and drag out, so it never gets resolved, or it gets resolved in a way that's negative to where we hope it's going. And then you look at everything that's going on that they put right in our faces. Again, a discussion topic in regard to this entire socialist movement, this communist movement, and all these people out there campaigning. Comes to the primaries, they're all winning and this and that. There aren't enough stupid people in this country that would actually go out and vote for these people and put them in office, because it would undermine everything. If just watching New York City, they haven't already learned that there's no such thing as a free lunch, they're not going to get it. When you take New York City, that is probably outside of either the entire state of Israel or the city of Tel Aviv, the largest Jewish community in this country, if not in the world, and they voted in Mamdani, they're making it so painfully obvious that it's a show that it's a joke. It's that wet towel across the face. Wake up. It's simple. Observe and think, not sit there, watch it, and shake your head.
Well, that's the whole point, right? I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like this, I believe that Mom Dami is 100% central casting. And I agree with everything that you just said. I don't believe that for 1 second that this guy is an organic candidate who just came along out of nowhere, an outright communist, especially in that demographic in New York City, and won that election. Not for a second do I believe that. But that's not the question. See, a lot of people will only go that far and say, well, he's central casting, he's part of the movie. Just sit back, enjoy the show. Shut up, Panikin. No. The whole point is that they're getting people, they're wanting people to react to this. And we're not, I don't believe that we're exempt from that. In other words, like, I don't believe that we're simply, again, with all due respect to Derek Johnson, I don't believe that the normies are the only target audience of this movie. If they wanted us to trust the plan blindly, if they wanted us to trust Trump blindly, which I think would be a terrible idea for free-thinking sovereign people, the people of a sovereign country, all right, we're supposed to question our leaders. I mean, since when is it a patriotic thing, a patriotic principle to sit back and put blind trust in any politician, including Donald Trump, including the white hats? Is that suddenly, all of a sudden, that's changed? For hundreds of years, what's defined a patriot is someone who's a rugged individualist who thinks for themselves, who isn't afraid to question anything and anyone at any time for any reason. That's what it means to be an American. And now suddenly people are saying the opposite, that you're going to question my patriotism for doing the exact thing that led me here to begin with? Give me a break. I mean, again, if they wanted us to trust anybody blindly, which would be a terrible idea, then the optics would be radically different. Everything would just be going swimmingly right now. There would be no question about anything in terms of the white hats being in full control, in terms of all of the cabal already being taken care of, in terms of the media, in terms of justice. In other words, we would already be seeing all of these things transpire. In my view, we would already be in the justice phase. We would already be seeing the mainstream media telling the truth. We would already be seeing everything lining up with this ideology, this narrative of the patriots being in full control. Only we're not. All right. Like I said before, there are arguments to be made on both sides. I know where I stand. I've made that painfully obvious to everybody. But at the end of the day, they're trying to break the programming of all of us, folks. Don't kid yourself for 1 second. Don't kid yourself. That's exactly what they're doing. The mixed messaging, the negative optics, the switches in policy, the turning the base against, turning on certain people on the base, turning on all the wrong people, as opposed to, and then embracing all the wrong people at the same time. I mean, give me a break. This is all, yes, it's all part of the scripted movie. Yes, it does not contradict the idea that the Patriots are in full control, but we're not talking about who's in control and whether or not these are psyops. Those are already givens. As far as Mark and I are concerned, I bet just about everybody out there. Okay.
There's a reason it's
The
called.
question is, what do we do in response to it? Go ahead.
No, I said there's a reason it's called the Great Awakening. People have got to wake up to what's going on. We were told from the get-go. And again, I'm not saying to believe everything that we've heard, because a lot of this is a psyop and a lot of what we've heard is a crock. Okay? But we were told from the get-go, people you think are good guys may turn out to be bad guys, and people who are bad guys may turn out to be the good guys. We don't know. Mm-hmm. And when you don't know, you don't sit back and wait for it to happen. What's a flashing yellow light for? You proceed with caution.
Yep.
It's as simple as that. You proceed with caution. You watch, you listen, you absorb, and you discern. Yep. We're all allegedly thinking human beings. I've got to start thinking. Got to start thinking independently. There are a lot of people out there that I know I've spoken to who feel that, there should only be one. We don't need all these news organizations like we've had since the advent of cable. Just need one news source. No.
Wrong.
Yeah, it doesn't quite work that way, because the one news source at some point in time is going to stop telling you the truth. They're
right.
going to stop giving you what you should know, and they're going to give you what they want you to know. And that's where we are right now. When you're in a PSYOP, you're being given what they want you to know. And usually what they want you to know in a psychological operation is not what's really happening.
That's right.
So again, you've got to sit back, you've got to watch, and you have to go and say, like I said before, does this resonate with you? If it doesn't resonate with you, there's probably something in there that's not the truth.
That's right.
If it wholeheartedly resonates with you and you feel, yeah, I can get behind this, then there's something to it. But people, I can't keep saying it enough. We've got to go and take it back. We've got to start using our heads, got to start using our hearts, and we've got to show the white hats, we've got to show the military, we've got to show the people in control that we're ready to do this, that we've learned.
Yep.
And not only that we've learned, but it'll stick. You know, that old phrase from 9/11, if you see something, say something, is no longer about if you see, a Middle Eastern looking guy carrying a briefcase or a shopping bag and he happens to leave it somewhere.
Yep.
This is now life or death. And we don't know who the good guys are and who the bad guys are.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You got to have those Jedi senses up.
Mm-hmm. Hey, that's absolutely true, man. And there's so many examples that we could point to where the narratives that are being put out by what we call white hat productions, okay, or the Ghost in the Machine, Forpog, etc. There are so many examples where what the dominant ideology, the dominant conversation within the truth community has been for such a long time, right? Patriots are in full control, military's in full control, watching a scripted movie, etc. But they keep infusing more and more information into that narrative that I believe, like I said, is deliberately contradicting a lot of the presumptions that we had. And it doesn't mean that they're not in control, but I do believe what they're doing is they're trying to rattle our cage a little bit. Because again, you go back to the fake Biden years, just as an example. Back then, in the aftermath of a stolen election, in the aftermath of COVID, in the aftermath of January 6th, yes, there were a lot of questions that were difficult, certainly, surrounding the jab, rollout, Operation Warp Speed, the January 6th scenario, et cetera, et cetera. But when you looked at the big picture, and we had this clearly fake president for 4 years, it was a lot more in a sense, compared to where we're at now, is a lot more linear than what we're seeing now. Because back then it made a lot more sense. Like, okay, this is clearly a psyop. They're literally trying to wake everybody up, daring people to notice that this is not the same Joe Biden, having stumble all over the place, not even form a coherent sentences, calms up the what, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And in my mind back then, there was much more, White Hat Productions was much more uniform in terms of the narrative that they were putting out that enabled everybody to sort of get on board this train, right? And to follow Q and to trust in the operation, et cetera. But over the past couple of years, particularly the last year or so, there has been a pretty dramatic shift in terms of what we anticipated when Trump came back. Not necessarily the timing, but what we anticipated would happen versus what's appearing to happen optically. And I do believe that that's specifically being done for all the reasons that we laid out here tonight. So, I mean, there's so many aspects to this conversation, but I think we've hit upon something that I believe is truly important when we're talking about demanding accountability and being a part of a military-civilian alliance and reevaluating the extent of our responsibility. If it's indeed true that we, the people, are ultimately the plan and the military is the backstop. I think a lot of people maybe have that kind of reversed in a way, thinking that, well, not that the people are the backstop, but that ultimately it's the military who's going to do all of the perform all of the actions to bring us into the justice phase, to have all of these things happen while we essentially sit back and just do what we've done for years now, which is to make the assumption, more or less, that that's the extent of our responsibility, is that we just have to be the calm in the storm. And believe me, I do think we have to be. Don't get me wrong. When the hammer drops, the reason that we've been pre-awakened, the reason that we have been front loaded with all this information is so that we can be that calm in the storm. But prior to us actually getting there, I do very wholeheartedly agree with Mark and this idea that it's time for us to reevaluate our role as Anons, as awakened patriots, in taking a lead role.
Let's go back to one other thing.
Sure.
Going back to the speech,
yep,
and everything else, as far as, people getting off their butts and doing something, and, actually getting out on the streets and saying something. That first salvo was fired Thursday night, and a lot of stuff was revealed. But in the interim, we also know that you had Cash, what was it, a week or two ago? We got all the stuff on Georgia, blah, blah, blah. And you got last week prior to the speech, excuse me, senior moment. Her name was right there in my head. And Colorado election fraud.
Tina Peters?
Tina Peters was just released, had a conversation with the president prior to his speech.
Mm-hmm.
We're also told, a couple of years ago, that it only takes one state to overturn what happened in 2020. Got Tina Peters with all of her information on Colorado. You got all the information on Georgia. You have everything that he revealed on Thursday. Next slide. Come on, people. This is what I'm talking about with it being right there in your face. Where's the outrage?
Mm-hmm.
Lord knows that the other side has plenty of it. And whenever there's outrage, they get out there and they're screaming about it. Where is the righteous indignation? Where are we? Besides sitting here watching this and going, yeah, I agree.
Well, you and I are right here having this conversation, and everybody else out there is listening. So you're absolutely right. But and this is why a lot of people have questioned the Q operation, because in a lot of ways it has the argument, right? The argument against the Q operation has always been that it's a form of like a modern iteration of an Operation Trust sort of a scenario that was, for those who don't know, that was like back with the Bolsheviks ran that, back in Russia all those decades ago. The idea that it's designed to more or less pacify, to placate, to keep everybody docile, and to get everyone to ultimately just to create this sort of cult of personality around the white hats, around Trump, and believing that everything that's happening is all fake, right? And so, but what you just said is a really interesting, and I think it would feed into the argument of a lot of these people. Not that I believe this, folks, and let me just be abundantly clear. I've looked into Operation Trust. I've evaluated this from multiple different angles. In fact, Mark and I have even had conversations about this off air. I've never really talked about it on air. But in all honesty, I've looked at that angle as well. But the reality is that I don't believe that. I do believe that this is a benevolent military operation. But the argument being against it is highlighted, I think, in large part by what you just said. Like, where is the outrage? Why are people? Because the left. They're up in arms. It doesn't take much to stir up that crowd. Yes, a lot of it's, as we know, it's astroturf. It's bought and paid for protest as well. But they act very immediately and passionately against things that they don't like. Even though they may not be quarterbacking things, the useful idiots get out on the streets and they make their voices heard. Now, I'm not suggesting that we do what they do, but I am pointing out, and as Mark was doing, and highlighting the difference there. is that there's a certain danger in believing that everything has already been taken care of and that everything is going to just work out just fine. And all you have to do is sit back and enjoy the show. And that's the point that I've been making, is that it doesn't have to be a one or the other situation. As a matter of fact, I think that the white hats are trying to get us to have these types of conversations, to stimulate this type of thought, to not be afraid to go there and to examine all different aspects of something that at the end of the day, as Mark has said multiple times, none of us know definitively anything. And when you don't know something definitively, like when you don't have the proof, I mean, we certainly can prove, like I've mentioned before, that there are comms, that there are psyops going on, that it's being done with military precision. But that doesn't prove anything about the objective. That doesn't prove anything about the timeline or where it's going and what ultimately it's designed to do. And I believe that as honest patriots, that's part of our job, is to evaluate all different sides and not alienate each other. And this is something that Mark has always been. I mean, I'll push back. If people are going to push in my direction, I'll certainly push back. But ultimately, I believe that what we really should be doing is having these open and honest discussions about where we are, about what we feel, about what we're thinking, and evaluating all of these different angles. Because fifth generation warfare, I've mentioned this before, psychological operations specifically. If you go and look it up, this is not my opinion, this is a fact. If you go and look up what the objectives are, it's to keep people passive, to placate, and then ultimately at a certain point to demoralize people. Okay. Now, I believe that the white hats are using the same tool that the cabal has used against us. They're reverse engineering it. Nothing has changed in my overall viewpoint. But at the end of the day, that is something that's still very much, I mean, it's kind of like the elephant in the room that nobody really wants, that certain people don't really even want to talk about. And when you recognize that level of passivity and that mind control that's taken root, that we both agreed has taken root to a large degree inside of our community that wasn't necessarily there 5-6 years ago, to me, in the minds of honest people, that should prompt certain questions. And that's where I'm coming from.
What have I said for a long time already? To me, and I'm not putting them down in any way, shape, manner, or form, they have their purpose in this PSYOP. But the Q drops are mental masturbation. Well, they are there to keep us busy. It's like a scavenger hunt.
Mm-hmm.
It's there to keep us occupied so we don't lose hope and we don't lose focus on the mission. But this is a scavenger hunt that has no end to it. You're not going to find
But that's not the entirety of the mission, right?
Exactly. It has nothing to do with the mission. It's just to get us engaged.
Mm-hmm.
We have to be engaged, but we have to be engaged actively, not passively.
That's right.
That's the key right there.
Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more. Absolutely. Well, as per usual, Mark, we're on the same page, and there were a whole bunch of different topics that I was going to maybe bring up, but I had a feeling this was probably going to happen. We were going to get into it, and then the next thing you know, it would be an hour and a half, an hour 45 minutes later, and I hadn't even gotten to my second question yet. But let me just throw this at you, because you did mention the midterms a little while ago. All right. And in the absence, well, not in the absence, but in the aftermath now of July 4th, the 250th is in the rear view. Not that we're setting expectations or timelines, but let's be honest, a lot of people are now switching their focus. Maybe not so much during the summertime, but certainly over the next couple of months, this is going to be the primary, one would think is going to be the primary focal point. And you talked a little bit about the possibility we might not even have midterms. Trump has floated that idea as well. So, and this, of course, is in conjunction with what we were talking about a little bit earlier, Trump's speech about election fraud, kind of pitching this as a way of getting the SAVE Act across the finish line. And we're seeing that Congress, as per usual, I mean, they can pass a spending bill to send our tax dollars all over the world, and they basically rubber stamp that, no issue, no question about that. But when it comes to something substantive that's actually going to make a difference and give we the people the power back, like the SAVE Act, that is supported by a vast majority of the country, somehow, some way, they can't find the will to do it. Much like the the way they were supposedly optically dragging their feet with the Epstein files, right? So we got the upcoming midterms, the SAVE Act that Congress refuses to pass. And clearly this is a common sense bill, like I outlined before. We're just talking about proving that you're actually a citizen of this country and you have the right to vote. I mean, it's the most common sense thing that you can imagine. And to add to that, another layer, of course, is that Trump has been repeatedly calling for the termination of the filibuster to push this through. This has been an ongoing narrative, which to me seems unlikely to happen. I don't know if you have a different viewpoint on that. But I mentioned earlier, he used this primetime address the other night, seemingly more to push the SAVE Act than to kind of divert everybody's attention back in time and get them focused on, well, we need justice. It's like that wasn't the main crux of the speech. He did talk about criminal investigations if necessary, but it was really more geared towards stopping this moving into the future. And likewise, Mark Wayne Mullen, the next day, gets up, he gives a press conference, and he talks about all the reasons why we can never allow this to happen again. And, a lot of people out there scratching their head and saying, well, that's all well and good, but how about arresting the people who did it in the first place? Okay, so having said that, Q told us back in I believe it was in 2017. It was one of the early drops. I think it was one of the first 200 drops. I don't remember exactly which one it was, but he said that elections, and then there was like the parentheses and Tuesday, TUES, no longer matter. And that was like an all bold, and it was all caps. Elections Tuesday no longer matter at this stage, right? So I guess my question to you is, looking forward toward the midterms, you had posited the theory that they may not happen. Are you interpreting this as a part of the movie, or do you think it's possible that Trump, who knows, he might declare a national emergency? That was one of the things that I said in the aftermath of that speech. To me, it would seem like a perfect time to declare a national emergency with regard to our election integrity infrastructure. So give us your thoughts on that, the midterms, and what's, I guess, on the horizon, and we'll kind of wind things down.
Well, I think, look, if we got to the point where it's coming toward the elections and he follows what he did last Thursday, and more stuff is dropped and more stuff is dropped and more things are brought out in regard to the lack of election integrity, it could get to a point as we come close to the election. I know the popular thought with everybody out there is October 26th. Something's going to happen October 26th, blah, blah, blah. But it's a very distinct possibility that they could cancel the midterms and say that in a matter of national security that they're canceling it, which of course is going to cause a huge groundswell of people getting out there screaming and protesting. He's taking over the government, blah, 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 doing this, that, which of course will trigger having the military intervention that we've all been waiting for, et cetera, et cetera. I want to turn this around a little bit. And even though I know that I'm asking the question of a patriot, and I can predict the answers I'm going to get, I want people to look at this as just a common sense test. Okay, so I'm going to play journalist for a second, which most journalists would never do. You've got the SAVE Act. When you go into Walgreens, you're not feeling well, you need some, Dimetap, or one of the things that might help you decongest a little bit and go to sleep. They're going to ask you for your ID, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not trying to be nasty, but you don't exactly look like you're under 18. Okay. I know it's happened to me when I go into the drugstore and I go to get certain medications like that. Can I see your ID? You going to say that's a violation of my rights, or are you going to say, well, this is kind of stupid, but here's my ID? Okay. Cop pulls you over. You weren't doing anything wrong. Let me see your license and registration. You're going to argue with the cop. You're going to show him your ID. You're going to show the ID. Where is the sense, other than what's being brought up with paid for crowds and what's being brought up by the mainstream media? What is the sense of showing your ID for the most important duty that you have in this country? It's a privilege. It's a duty. And we already know, never mind the illegal aliens, never mind ballot stuffing, because that crap has to go away as far as the mail-in ballots are concerned. But just from a simple point where you have people of certain groups who will vote in blocks in one place and then move to where another one of their blocks happens to be and vote in that place also. Where is the problem to people about showing that ID? Having a law that says you have to show that ID. They didn't object to the law that you have to have a driver's license. They don't object to it when they need their medication. They have to show their ID.
I had to put this comment up here too, because it was Stephen Miller made reference to that as well. It's true. It's absolutely true. And I mean, Trump nails it every time he talks about it. It's the most obvious thing in the world. The only reason that you would be opposed to this is if you want to cheat. That's it. There's literally no other logical way to even make a case for it. And this whole idea
bringing it up is the fact that it goes back to what we were just discussing before.
Yeah.
With them making it so plainly obvious. The only thing that they haven't done is stood naked with a banner and gone, look, stupid, here. It's a simple, the old work adage of KISS, keep it simple, stupid. Mm-hmm. If they made it any simpler for the people, you would think that you were dealing with a bunch of, I'm going to insult a bunch of people again now with this, you'd be dealing with a bunch of retards.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. I mean, they can't make it more obvious. So when you look at stuff like this, and if you think pragmatically and you follow the logic of the chess game or the logic of just any war pattern to begin with, okay, if they're going to allow them to keep cheating in the elections and stealing the elections, and your elected officials, and we've got majority in both houses, okay, why can't we get this thing pushed through? Why is it not happening? Okay, we got to take the next step. Nobody's getting it. Nobody's making a protest about this. Let's go and move to the next step. Okay, we can't trust the elections. We're going to postpone or cancel the midterms. Well, everybody's up in uproar. Okay, call out the National Guard. Let's quell the uproar. Let's have that public military control. And it's almost like your parents saying to you, if you do this, I'm going to take away TV for a week. But you got to poke the bear, and they go and they take away TV for a week. If you want your TV back, you got to learn a lesson. Nope. Got to poke the bear again, lose it for another week. It's like dealing with children.
Yep.
And the people just don't want to get it. And they don't, and they, you've got the divided teams, and they're playing the sides, and they're, one side is saying this and the other side saying that, but nobody Nobody's doing a thing about it.
That's how they play us. That's how
And what do? We
go
fall
along with it. And we choose sides and we say, no, this side is right. No, that side is right. And they're just sitting back laughing at all of us, right? And, you know, I see comments in here. It's like people are saying, and it's a legitimate question, like, you know, how are we supposed to do this? It's like, you know, saying that it's, I think someone said it's ludicrous. Like that what we're arguing right now, Mark, is ludicrous. Don't you know? To try to get people to break the conditioning of learned helplessness, as if we, the people, didn't start this country to begin with. All right. Less than 3% participated in the American Revolution. I'm not calling for violence, but certainly we have the Second Amendment. And that's ultimately what the First Amendment hinges upon. Like Lewis always says, it's the threat of the use of force and the willingness to do so if necessary that makes the First Amendment and our voices heard. Okay. Don't get me wrong here, folks. I'm not suggesting that the military isn't backstopping all this. I've been making that argument all along. But this whole idea of learned helpless, I guess, it's totally ludicrous that we, the people, could actually band together and force change in this country. Bullshit. All right. The reason that we can't is what Mark just described, is because they constantly are keeping us divided. And they're constantly reinforcing this idea of learned helplessness. And guess what? This mentality has taken root inside of our community, where people think, oh, we just have to sit back and eat our popcorn and trust the military and not do anything. The fact of the matter is, folks, it's our responsibility. It's people using our voices and being active, going out and protesting, running for office, applying the pressure wherever and whenever we need to force that change. You know, some people say, well, look what happened on January 6th. Okay. Yeah, there were feds there. It was a lot of that was a controlled operation. They knew what they were doing. Okay. But I would posit the theory that, what was it? Like 50,000 people showed up for January 6th. Was it something like that? I don't remember what the numbers were, but I want to say it was something along those lines of like 50 something thousand people. Okay. If 1 million people descended upon DC, there'd be nothing that they could do. Even if they showed up there without guns, without weapons, without any desire for violence, if 1 million people showed up, and that's on a grand scale, okay, that's like on a national level. But to sit there and to think, and this really just ticks me off that people try to make this argument that we the people are powerless and can't do anything. That's the whole point of this operation, is for us to realize our power. How many times has Trump told us we're giving you your power back?
That's right.
Okay. But he's not just going to give it to us. We have to take it. All right. Freedom isn't given. You have to take it. That's the whole point. That's exactly what we're talking about here. And look at country. I mean, you saw what happened in Albania recently. The whole country came out in protest. That's what needs to happen. All right. This idea that we can't do anything and we just have to defer and put blind trust in the military and sit back and eat our popcorn. Sorry, but no, I think that's a bunch of crap. All right. And I'm just going to tell it the way it is, because I've been listening to this narrative for far too long. And it's totally counterproductive to what this movement is really ultimately all about. And it's high time that people start to get louder and start to demand accountability and start to get active on a local level. The data centers is another example. How many times have we seen people come, these local communities with these billionaire projects, these huge interests behind them, these billionaires, and their agendas with their data centers, regardless of what the data centers are actually going to be for. All right. People in a small town come together, they band together, and they get these projects shut down. Why? Not because they're simply showing up with like 5 to 10 people, but they're showing up there with like 10,000 people to make a point. Okay. And there's always these people. It's like, oh, you guys are running for office locally. No, I don't happen to want to run for political office, but there are a lot of other people who do. I'm doing my part by doing what I'm doing right now. What are you doing?
We are a country of loudmouths. Mouths, no action. Exactly what you just said.
All these people want to do is be naysayers all day long.
They want to be naysayers. They want to come out and express their point of view, because that's my right. And I can't tell you how many times over the past year I've said this on the air. Rights come with responsibilities. And if you don't accept your responsibilities, especially when it comes to your freedom of speech, shut your mouth.
I couldn't agree
All
more.
you're doing is making a fool of yourself.
And it's the same people who are the naysayers who then turn around and call us negative. That's the incredible thing about this. I mean, you people really need to check yourselves. You really do.
Well,
All right, because we're not here telling anybody what to do. First of all, we're having a conversation. We're having an open discussion about it. And a lot of people, it's like all they want to do is poke holes in things because they want to live inside of their little bubble where they just can sit back and trust the plan and eat the popcorn and just call everybody else a panic-in and everything else. And that's exactly the mentality that Mark and I are deconstructing. And that's what I'm committed to. So if you don't like it, tough. But this is what being a truther is all about. It's saying the things that are actually true that sometimes some people don't want to hear. Well, so be it. So be it.
You've heard me say many, many times, what I'm doing is my penance for 46 years in the mainstream media. And what I'm trying to do, and what we're trying to do, and what many of us are trying to do, is to get you to engage, not sit on the couch, not just watch. And I know that, for quite a while, we all did say that. Sit back, enjoy the movie. No, we've learned. We've learned you can't just sit back and watch the movie. The movie's going to play out whether we watch it or not. But we have to actively become participants in the movie. Because that's what the script writers,
that's right,
and that's what the directors and the producers are waiting for.
And who's to say we can't do both, by the way? Who's to say that we can't enjoy certain aspects of the show, that we can't find humor in some of the things that are being done? I mean, we've talked about certain aspects of the movie tonight, like Mom Dami, for example. Totally AstroTurf, totally scripted. And there's a million different things that we could point out all day long, saying this is fake, this isn't real, this is a psyop, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. But does that really move the needle on anything? And that's really the point. So it's like you can do both of those things. There's nothing, I'm not telling anybody out there to not to throw away their popcorn. I'm not telling anybody what to do. I'm saying you can enjoy the show. You can believe that Patriots are in control, but you can also perhaps re-envision what your role is in this entire process. That's what we're getting at here. You don't have to pick one or the other. Right?
But you do have to get involved.
You do. That's right. And even if you have, I mean, look, I've been active before. I've been to plenty of local meetings, school board meetings. I've gotten involved on, I don't just sit here and not practice what I preach. In addition to dedicating 5+ years of my life while I'm raising my children and sacrificing a great many things along the way, I've also in my private life been very active at the local level. And you win some, you lose some. But the fact of the matter is you stay in the fight. And that's what we're urging folks to do, right? But at the end of the day, yes. I mean, do I agree with this idea that, as I've been saying all along, that the mass awakening hinges upon visible accountability and justice, and to a large extent, either the complete discrediting of the mainstream media or its complicity in telling the truth? Yes, I do believe that. But that's the part of the point, is that we need to continue to push and push and push and never stop fighting and get involved in any possible way that we can. All right. And I'm not here, again, I mean, I know I'm passionate. I'm not here to judge anybody for anything. It's just that, in a lot of ways, I'm responding to a lot of the criticism, not just what people are saying in the chat, but that what I'm seeing inside of the community as a whole. All right. And I feel it's incumbent upon, I mean, if I have a platform and a voice, as does Mark, and we have people who are engaged and want to hear various different aspects of not just one simple narrative, but looking at the truth from various different perspectives, it's incumbent upon us to do that. I truly believe that.
It's incumbent upon all of us.
Yep.
Not just the people in front of the camera. Everybody who's watching. It is incumbent on all of us. Never mind the 3% who got involved in the American Revolution. Okay. If we're going to take this back, if we're going to undo what we, again, I repeat it again, what we allowed to be done, we have to get involved.
That's right.
Simple as that. And
Absolutely.
I'd stake my life on the fact that that's what the white hats are waiting for.
I couldn't agree with you more, man. You know, I really do. At one point, I would have said, and you and I had previous discussions where, again, we put out a very different narrative, and some people would stand in judgment of that and say, well, you're changing your narrative and this and that. Well, guess what, folks? Life is a journey. Okay, circumstances change, and being I think it was I can't remember who said it, but a foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds. All right. Ultimately, people's minds are supposed to change as new information becomes available, as the journey continues. All right. And it doesn't mean that I'm going back and reversing, nor is Mark, any of our core positions on anything. We still believe that we're watching a scripted movie to a large extent. We still believe that the Patriots are in control. To what degree, you can debate that all day long. But the fact is, we're both in agreement on that we're watching this play out. The military's primarily in control. But as more information becomes available, as time goes on, and as the narratives and the information that we're being subjected to has shifted, we shift along with it. And we have to, and don't get me wrong, a lot of people are going to disagree, and that's okay. That's part of the vibrancy that's part of the necessity of this type of a conversation. But I, for one, am not going to shy away from it, right? Because whatever I believe is actually the truth as I see it doesn't mean that it's, I'm not suggesting here that everything that I say or Mark says is the gospel, but we're telling you our honest opinion. Like, we're not lying to you. And that's really, I think, the core of what this discussion is all about. And it's one of the reasons that I love talking to Mark, because he and I can just have these types of discussions and it flows so freely. We vibe off each other so well. So, well, we're at 2 hours. So normally this is kind of the time when we start to wind things down a little bit. And yeah, I had about 10 different topics, Mark, and I think we hit on like 2.
Gee, there's a surprise.
But no, this is a great one. So why don't you give us some thoughts to kind of wrap this up?
Well, look, there are so many things that are going on, and I think everybody pretty well knows, who knows me, that my passion has been with the kids, and there's just even in that situation, we could assume very greatly that it's all done, it's all taken care of already, but we don't know. Even with that, we don't know, but we do know, no matter how you want to look at it, a lot of what we've heard over time is that this movement isn't, this, that, or the other. It's about good versus evil. Okay. There are always going to be evil people in the world.
Yep.
You're never going to be able to eradicate all of them. But the point happens to be that we can be more focused. It goes back to what I said before in regard to, if you see something, say something. We'll have to be more vigilant and more aware. Because one thing that I always tried to explain to people when I was still working is, there but for the grace of God go we. Okay, because when a child goes missing, or a child gets killed, or a child gets raped, next one could be yours. And you never want that to be. And the same thing with this entire movement. It can always be you. And we never want it to be us. So being ignorant or being passive isn't an option anymore. We all have to see, we all have to learn, and we all have to do what we can to try and make this the best that we possibly can, because we're getting one shot at this, just
Right.
one shot.
Mhm.
And if we blow it, game over. Game over.
I couldn't agree more. And I mean, that's one of the things that's massively encouraging to me is looking around and looking at the news and seeing so many different examples of these pedophile rings, these sick bastards that are getting swept up. Now, again, in light of our overall conversation tonight, you could look at that through the lens of, well, it's D-class. You see, they're putting all this stuff out that's already happened, and they're like replaying it or whatever, right? But do we really have the luxury of believing that to be the case? I mean, would you stake your kid's life on that? I certainly wouldn't, right? I mean, do we really think that there's the white hats have done all of this stuff behind the scenes, and that all of this evil has just simply been eradicated from the world, and we're watching a show right now, and that's really the full extent of it? I would posit very much the opposite. There's a lot of evil still out there in the world. And it's not simply a matter of, I mean, do I think that we can make massive progress as we look at this overall situation? Do I think we're making massive progress in the right direction? Absolutely, I do. But is that an indication somehow that everything has already been taken care of, and that we can just, again, sit back and not have to be active? And the children specifically, that's like the number one issue. And I'm glad that, I mean, that's always been where, Mark, you've had your central focus. And for me as well. I mean, that was ultimately, I've said many times, what got me to get off the sidelines and really prompt me to move forward is when I started to hear about the satanic ritual abuse. I mean, certainly we all knew that to some degree human trafficking existed, that child rape and those types of things did happen, but it was always through the lens of what we were led to believe by the mainstream media, which was that these were just, anomalies and so forth. We had no idea that this was on an industrial scale. So again, I would argue that this is just yet another example of why we need to continue to fight, and we can't take for granted or just believe that all of this stuff has already been taken care of. It's being taken care of, and that's the point. That's the counter argument to it. But again, those two things can coexist. But it's very, very important that we never lose sight of that.
No, it's to me, it's the most important thing out there. And I mean, I don't, not in the least do I put aside our veterans, because without them and our active military, we wouldn't be having these discussions.
Yep.
So, we've got to make sure that they're taken care of as well. But to a certain extent, they can take care of themselves. These kids can't. So it's very, very important that people keep that in the forefront of their minds. For those of you who are interested, who might have missed it this morning, at 8:00 on my Fake News Rumble channel, we'll be playing back the Respect that aired this morning with Elisa and Stu, which has Lynn Scott Hagerman, who is a survivor of SRA and child trafficking. So we've got that going on. Coming up in October, we do have an event. There'll be more information coming out about it as we start to put together the advertising information for it. But there will be an event in Clearwater, Florida, that will have many, many very popular speakers at it, which will be mostly focused around child trafficking. So it'll be October 15th through the 19th in Clearwater, Florida. And if you can make it there, love to see you. So there are a lot of things going on, but we have a lot of work that we as people have to do, that we as patriots have to do.
Yep.
As we discussed a bunch of times before, we've got to get out there and let's demonstrate some of that righteous indignation.
That's exactly right. And most importantly, with regard to the children, because like I said, just a moment ago. I'm not sure if I got a little bit distracted by something in the chat there, but the point that I was making ultimately was that massive progress has been made and is being made, and that you can acknowledge that, but at the same time, like Mark was saying, realize that there is far more work to be done, and it involves us. And when Q, I mean, even if you want to just be, go straight by everything that Q said, told us that, this is a Mil-Civ alliance. And I happen to believe, and I'll just kind of leave it at this in closing tonight, that our responsibility as the civilian wing of that alliance is to do a lot more than to sit back and remain passive and just enjoy the show and eat the popcorn and so forth, while a lot of this evil is still out there and still perpetrating crimes against humanity, still perpetrating crimes against children. And it's incredible because there's so many folks out there. And I will say this, it's rather sad to see so many people misinterpret the message that we attempted to deliver. What's one thing I've learned about podcasting and being a kind of a quasi-public figure, you can literally get on screen and you can say the sky is blue, and you'll have people in the comments saying, why are you saying the sky isn't blue? Why are you saying the sky is pink? And unfortunately, that's just the way that it goes. But a lot of people out there, it's just incredible because they've radically misinterpreted the message that I'll only speak for myself, that I've tried to convey in recent months. And that's okay. I mean, eventually, like I said, everybody's on their own journey, and I'm not doing this for any other reason than because I believe I was prompted to do this from the very beginning. This came from what I believe was a source of divine inspiration, and I never knew exactly where it was going to take me. But I can tell you one thing: wherever I go, my allegiance remains the same as it's always been. It's always been to the truth. It's always been to the children, and that's exactly, that's where I hang my hat every night, and that's the peace that I rest in. And if people don't like that, well, so be it. So be it. But those aren't the type of supporters that I want, quite frankly. So if that applies to you, adios. All right. But all the other people out there, the people who are with me, who was the vast, vast majority of the folks who have taken this journey with me, I also want to salute you, each and every one of you, and say thank you for being so supportive and knowing exactly where I'm coming from, and knowing that my core message has never changed. Same as Mark. Okay. Since the moment I met this man, I knew exactly what he was all about. So it's been a wonderful conversation.
It always is. It always is.
Oh, I thought you were going to say something. Yeah, it always is. And indeed, I absolutely, I cherish these moments. And like I said, it's been a long time coming since you and I just sat down. And it's one thing to be on a panel or a round table when, you've got multiple different people. I love those types of shows, but there's something a lot more intimate, just about a one-on-one. And I knew that just simply based upon our discussions off the air, that this was going to be a powerful message. So hopefully folks enjoyed it. If you haven't done so already, can you do us a favor, do us a solid and hit that thumbs up button? I don't know, Mark, are you co-streaming this or you're not? No. Okay. So it is, it's of course on Rumble. If you're watching on my Rumble, if you happen to be on X, we got about like 500-600 people on X watching. So if you could hit the thumbs up there, really would appreciate that. Thank you so much. I just want to also thank my great mod, Penny Lane, for taking care of business today in the chat. I really do appreciate all that you do. And for everybody out there who are supporting us with all the wonderful, kind comments, really do appreciate that. So we're going to sign off now. I've got, let's see, on, I believe it's, yes, on Thursday, the 23rd at 4 p.m., we'll be doing a show with my friend Matt Geiger, and Ethan Lucas is actually going to be joining us as well. These are like the top two sponsors of my show, and they happen to be good friends of mine as well. I think they're both very knowledgeable. Ethan, of course, is the CEO of Sorona, and I guarantee you, folks, if you're one of the people out there who's tried these products, I'm pretty sure you've been blown away by them. I know I have. I keep getting more and more positive feedback on the newest products, which is the Chimera and the Redox that Ethan talked about last time. I have to reach out to him, but I'm assuming he's probably going to put together some sort of another special specifically for the audience. There were probably, oh gosh, there were dozens and dozens of people who took advantage of the last special. Like I said, people are absolutely loving these products. The elixir is amazing. And of course, Matt Geiger, like I always say, very knowledgeable guy, great anon, great patriot. He's dialed in to just about everybody in the truth community right now, and for good reason. He's sponsored with just about everyone because he's pretty much the best in the business when it comes to precious metals. He's an honest guy, and every time I mention him, I see people commenting. Do a show with him, people commenting saying they did business with him. He's a stand-up guy. They'd come back, and so we're going to get together, have a discussion about the landscape, talk a little bit about how these guys can help you out on Thursday. And of course, in the process, you'll be supporting the show. And I believe it is on the 27th, happens to be your B-Day, right?
Yeah, the big 7-2.
The big 7-2. And I'm going to be on, I was invited on to Patriots Across the Pond, which of course took the baton from Mark when he walked away from Respect. So we're going to be doing a show. I believe it starts at 10:30 Eastern time, 10:30 a.m. Eastern time. So I'm really looking forward to that as well.
That'll be a great round table.
Yeah, I think it should be. I really enjoyed talking to those two, Elisa and Stu, when we did that show together. So I'm looking forward to getting together with them as well. And I've got some other things cooking I just have to confirm. So lots of great content coming your way, folks. I really do appreciate it. Once again, please hit that thumbs up button. Check out the tallow products, the ad that I ran in the beginning. Like I said, this is someone who actually, her name, well, I probably doesn't mind me saying her name is Lori. She's a friend of mine. She's certainly a listener of the podcast. And these products are handmade with grass-fed tallow, the finest ingredients. She bottles them in glass bottles. I mean, everything about it. Even the presentation of these cosmetics are just unbelievable. So she's a patriot. She's running a small business, and she really could use everybody's support. So please just take a moment to use that promo code. It's PU15. You get 15% off your order. Guarantee you will not be disappointed. So with that, we will sign off and say adios to all of you wonderful people out there. We'll be back soon. But until then, God bless and Godspeed, everybody. Patriot.
Good night, everybody.